So we got Hunter here, big time whitetail deer hunter. What do you know?
What do you want to know?
Everything.
Okay. So there's several different seasons you can hunt with during the Iowa whitetail season. Obviously, it starts from August, goes till January, whatever, 2nd, 3rd.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So there's a wide variety of seasons you can hunt whitetail at this time. I mean, you start with early season. Bucks are developing testosterone, starting the rut, getting into September. Harder to pattern deer, more of a food source. A summer food source would be the place where you would want to sit on.
Mm-hmm.
Then getting in October, you get the kind of the peak of whitetail hunting in Iowa, which is the rut. Obviously, it's where the whitetails are starting to do mating activities, and as you know, it's a competition. Obviously, it's competition breeding. So bucks will chase. Bucks will just create a dominance activities. As fighting, marking territory such as rubs, scrapes, urine, etc. So that's where it just gets kind of interesting. More activity to, obviously hunt. And then as you get into the wintertime, you get into shotgun seasons where we're popular around here, deer drives and just hunting over a food source as the weather changes, as it gets colder and such. So.
Yeah, I know you mentioned talking about like October being the peak of the rut and all that. So when do you find the most success? Do you hunt bow?
I do hunt bow. A lot of times that's just a scouting method for me. I'm not really into killing because it's hard. It's tough to kill with bow. But we obviously save ourselves for the winter. We try and kind of just stay on the edges for bow hunting. Don't run into a bedding area and just start filling it with human scent and just human activities in general. Just try and save it so when we can effectively group hunt and just thoroughly go through every deer on the farm in early December and make sure we hit everything rather than. We can scout and stuff with bow hunting and obviously just watch the rut and stuff and see how our habitat's developing. But we like to thoroughly and carefully hunt everything the first weekend of December, and to us that we find the most success that way.
Yeah, so you're not big on, going after one buck bow season. You just like to see what's going on and then, group everything up, get ready for the gun seasons is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. And hunting pressure, in my eyes, is a huge part of it. Huge part of maintaining your land. Hunting pressure, pressure of just human pressure in general. Keeping deer in the area is, not really seeing where that big buck is headed rather than trying to pull him to the outskirts. So you're creating a safe place for them to go, and you can ensure deer through the entire season. Yeah,
I know. And just going into gun season, what's your favorite part about gun season, really?
My favorite part about gun season is to be able to see all the deer in such a short amount of time. Rather than bow season, you can see 20, 30 deer in 3 days or 3 different sits. Rather than you're in a 30-minute careful drive, obviously not, running through the woods like a bunch of hooligans. You'd actually carefully, slowly, playing the wind, effectively pushing deer through yourself to pretty much be able to see everything that's on the farm. And as well as planning it out so you can keep the deer in the area. And if you have to, rehunt them again, as well as just keeping it safe, hunting it 2 days out of that season, then hunting it 2 days later, just to make sure it stays safe and, untouched. Keep the hunting pressure down as much as possible.
Yeah, and when it comes to drives, I'm not very educated on this because it's usually just me, my dad, and my brothers going out, and we push our neighbor's land, a few other pieces of land, and we haven't had a ton of success. So I kind of want to know, what are your strategies leading up to it and then executing, obviously?
Mm-hmm. Well, a good group of people is definitely your first step. But sitting down, looking at maps, discussing where they'll travel through pinch points, through ridges, where they travel in the past, and just kind of planning it out to way the wind, the wind is blowing. So the wind's going this direction. Let's put our posters, which obviously standards, let's put them where the wind isn't blowing so the deer want to run either into the wind so they can smell or where they'll want to run to the safest place, which, if you're in an open area. But in general, I mean, the big strategy is playing out the wind, pushing deer into your own land so you can re-hunt, pushing them into a place where they feel safe, just making it easier for the deer, keep the hunting pressure as low as possible. That's the key in deer drives.
Yeah, I was going to say, I never really thought of it as a standpoint of like you're preparing, in advance for all this. Usually for our deer drives, for the most part, it's our last ditch because we prefer bow hunting is our kind of thing we do. All of us go out, and if we have no luck, then it's like, well, let's try to get a drive together as best as we can. It's kind of like a scramble and that kind of stuff. And we've had success. It's just there's always something that goes wrong, whether it's our people on stand are kind of too far out to make a good shot, or we're not pushing it effectively. We have one person pushing when it should be two people, and that kind of thing.
And see, if you play out the wind, I mean, you may want to push a woods a certain way, and then you're pushing into the wind, or you're pushing away from the wind, so you think they're not going to smell the pusher. Well, you want them to smell the pusher. So here the deer are going to bump, they're going to run into the wind, and they're going to run right by the pusher. It's just a whole bunch of different things to think about when you're pushing land, and especially around here, the hunting pressure is insane in some woods. So it's easy. It's to make sometimes it's not food, not the bedding area, but it's the hunting pressure sometimes can relieve the deer enough to where you have more deer than your neighbors got.
Yeah, I'd say for the most part, around the areas where we hunt, there's some areas that are very heavily pressured. It sounds like a war zone out there sometimes.
Yep, especially being shotgun.
Oh, yeah. We got some crazy people that come out and they go crazy.
And being close to public land as you are, it's the only patch of public land for, a good ways. So, I mean, I can see why it has the hunting pressure that it does.
There's not a lot of pressure early on, and then you get to like second season, I'd say, and that's where there's just people all over. And there's like, why would I go out some days? And then other days there's nobody, and then that's when we take advantage of it, kind of.
Yeah, and just to clarify, these are people that don't care about hunting, don't care about deer pressure, don't care about what they shoot. It's just to go out, shoot whatever is running. And I mean, a lot of times they won't even play out what other hunters are doing. They'll just walk in the woods, sit down, and hope for the best. And honestly, at this point, that's what makes it challenging for you guys, especially during bow season, because you do have bow hunters that go in there. And I mean, the hunting pressure is probably very great, and I would assume that's why it's a struggle for you guys. But I mean, it probably makes it fun, successful when you actually shoot something.
Yeah, like I said, most of the people are we got people coming from Cedar Rapids, Cedar Falls, that area, and they're coming down. They don't give two shits about anybody, really.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they're just coming in, trying to take their deer out, and they're leaving.
Yeah.
So moving on into another thing. What's the best deer you've ever shot?
It'd be 2 seasons ago. We actually decided to go second season one year. We wanted to utilize the 2 weekends because our pushers were busy. So we utilized the two weekends, and I actually found that it was very interesting, the results that we got from hunting second season. And we hunted the first weekend, and we were able to push the whole farm effectively. After first season, we had, because our hunting pressure was low, we had a lot more deer on the farm. Was able to push them and able to filter through a lot of deer. I actually shot at I guessed in the neighborhood of 170-inch deer, and I missed it. And we looked and looked and looked, didn't find it. But being that we had that second weekend, we were able to let the farm sit, let deer filter back in because of the no pressure. And as second season continued on, the pressure was higher around our farm. So we went back to second weekend, pushed a similar area not too far from where I shot at this buck, and we pushed through, and through the valleys you can see the deer filter across because they'll run the ridges, use the ridges to be able to see visually where they want to go, whether they want to cross, whether they want to keep running the ridge, and use it to smell obviously too as the wind whips through the valley. Whichever direction, the wind direction wouldn't matter at that point as the wind filtered through the valley. So I actually came down, he followed the ridge down to the farthest point, actually smelled one of the posters as they were running into the wind, as played, and then they smelled the poster, ran back into the drive, tried to go between me, and then I shot it during second season shotgun. It scored almost 180 as a typical. It was a 5x6 with just a sticker on it, but it was a typical 10. I had history with the deer. The previous bow season, I actually passed him up. He was bedded right underneath my stand. As I climbed the stand, I saw him in the dark, and I actually passed him up. He was a great deer, probably 150 inches, but we ended up having a shed from the previous year, which I did not know. So as a 2-year-old, we had a shed. I passed him as a 3-year-old, found his 3-year-old set of sheds, which was 150-inch deer as a 3-year-old, which is great genetics. I'm glad he got passed down a little bit. But as in shotgun, I mean, he was almost 180 inches. So just the inches of growth between those and how much history we had with the deer was pretty immense. And to be able to have that deer down, and I mean, that was one of the bigger bucks we had in the farmhouse. I shot at one, and then we had that one. So
yeah, I'd say the whole, like, you see a deer and you see it grow. That's probably one of the best things when it comes to deer hunting.
It's the best feeling for sure.
Yeah, you're tracking the deer. You're seeing it multiple years. You know, even if you miss it, that makes you want to go after it more. And I couldn't imagine it because, you know, I've never shot a deer myself. I've been pretty unsuccessful. But it's probably one of the greatest feelings.
It's better to me than actually killing the deer. My uncle's deer this year was right around 170 inches. And the previous year, we had found him as a 2-year-old, had a heavy, just a crappy 4-point shed. You would think nothing of it, throw it in the dog chew bin. I mean, it was just no good. And then the following year, we didn't see him during shotgun, didn't notice him anyway because he was only 130-some inch, 8-point, scrappy looking. Then the following year, his set of sheds, I mean, he started to gain some mass, and it was just an incredible set of sheds. I found they were actually 50 yards apart in the CRP field. I found them, and they were untouched. But it actually showed some potential. So being a scruffy 4-point, 2-year-old to a 3-year-old, just heavy set of sheds, it was just crazy genes. And then to my uncle shooting it this year and then having the set of sheds from the previous year, I mean, he was 170 inches as a 4-year-old, which is just nuts to me that they can grow that much. And having the right food, having the right water, having everything that could grow a big buck, in that short amount of time is just huge for me. And it's just, I want to start being able to watch them more so I can see them as that 6, 7, years old and what they change. That's kind of the next step. But I know how they change from 2, 3, 4, to 5, obviously. And it's crazy seeing the growth and keeping the sheds and stuff and trail camera pictures.
I see you mentioning, your farm a lot. What's that all set up like? Like, how big is it? What do you got set up?
So the farm itself is about 500 some acres. Okay, so think of a horseshoe, and the horseshoe right along the lines, like where the horseshoe would be, it's all valley. It's a valley that leads in. That's just part of a bunch of tributaries to the Turkey River, and it all flows downhill. But these valleys are very steep. I mean, the valley can't be 200 yards across. You could shoot from ridge to ridge. It's 200 yards across pretty much the whole way, and it was pasture for years, just all pasture. Then obviously the top in the middle of the horseshoe is the 2 farms, and then there's huge fields, so it's about 200 acres of field in that, and then there's just little parts of it as it wraps around, and it's a combination of field and woods, but there's not much woods at all. Like, you would look at it and you'd be like, there's no woods. How do they effectively hunt this? How do you get places without being seen? How do you keep the hunting pressure down while maintaining the habitat is a question I could see people asking.
Yeah, and I definitely say, like, some areas that people question can be some of the best areas when you're hunting. Those small little areas where deer are moving in between, and they'll sit for some deer love those areas where there's not much cover, so they're not suspecting in many areas.
And we've carefully planned it out too. We put all tillable acres have been into CRP for more than 3 years now. So and it's just crazy to watch the deer population improve as we let CRP grow. But within the CRP, we put in standing corn food plots. We've done standing corn food plots for the past 4 years now, and watching them grow has just been insane. It's definitely the testament of why there's deer in our farm, because as the winter, as the summer, it's not as popular. Obviously, the corn is not developed yet, but looking at the winter, it's just been crazy how much it improved the farm by just putting in 20 acres of standing corn and leaving it throughout the year. It's not going to yield. It's not going to yield what a farmer would want, but it's still enough where I can see deer in these places. I can see them. I can see the pressure between food and bedding area, and the bedding area isn't even that good, but there's still, 35, 40 bucks leaving their sheds in these areas and proving that food in these cold months is what brings them and what keeps them.
I'd say consistent source of food is the number one.
Oh, it's
deer.
huge. It's a game changer if you can be able to maintain that.
Yeah, I don't know, because the crop rotation near where my stand is, down by the counting ground that we live by, since that fluctuates, the deer also fluctuate.
Mm-hmm.
You can see a pattern with that. When it's a certain crop, you got nothing, and they're also whether the farmers get their crops out by a certain time is also a very big factor. Because I remember last year with all the wet, they couldn't get their crops out.
Yeah, because the corn stayed in longer.
Yeah, and I'd be sitting there wondering why there's no deer, and I'd turn and I'd look out into the field, and I'd be seeing so many bucks just bedded out in there.
Yeah,
and it's
roaming the corn. I mean, it's a constant food source. Does are going to be in that food source, and that's where the bucks are going to be at that time. So.
Yeah, I'd say that's one of the struggles I go with, not having like a set piece of land to where I can just always stay in that area and I can know it's going to be consistent.
Yep.
Where
in the county the hunting pressure is going to stay down.
Yeah, where county ground you could have 100 hunters coming through it before us and ruining everything before us,
and
which
not care about the wind and their scent in.
There's I don't know, there's just something to it to where like it's not as good as we could have our own land.
Yeah,
because that's always been our plan, is to buy the land across the road from us.
Yep.
And that would be perfect. We could turn that into whatever we want, because we used to have stands in there. I know my dad has shot plenty of nice deer out of there. I think one of the bigger ones he shot was about a 170.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if we could get a piece of land to call our own, that'd be awesome.
Exactly. And the private land is, around here is tough to come by, obviously. Mm-hmm. But once you secure it, I mean, you keep the hunting pressure down, maintain it. You wouldn't even have to really maintain the habitat as much as some professional hunters do. Mm-hmm. It would still be good because the hunting pressure is down. I mean, you honestly wouldn't need all the stuff that, you watch hunting videos and they're out there all summer doing this, that, and this, hinge cutting, planting food plots and all this. But if you left what you have, keep the hunting pressure down, hunt the edges, you can keep the deer population up in your private land.
Yeah, it's just something that only time will tell, whether or not whether or not we get an area land. I'm still going to go out hunting because just love for hunting and that kind of stuff.
And your guys' it can create a challenge, which is also fun for some hunters. I mean, you can get the joy out of a 130-inch deer that not a lot of people would, because you can only see a 130-inch deer, and for you to be able to get that deer down is definitely important in your land.
Yeah, I'd say number one, just getting my first deer down in general would be perfect.
And I mean, that just makes it so much more enjoyable rather than shotgun hunting when you go out and with a big group. And I mean, there's 40 deer that run by you, and you could shoot any one of them deer and it'd be your first deer. Is it going to feel as good as you shoot that deer with your bow?
Yeah, I'd say the drive hunting, I mean, I understand why people do it. It works. Mm-hmm. There's nothing you can argue that it does not work.
I would avoid it at all costs if I could.
Yeah.
But it's the effectiveness of doing it correctly is just the results are undeniably better than bow hunting. Going
back to what you said before, if you do it correctly and you plan it out, it's still a lot like bow hunting where you're planning in advance and you're understanding it. But like the people that kind of go out, they're all gung-ho, running through.
Run it through, get it done, try and see as many deer as possible. It's not going to help them out in the long run.
Yeah, I'd say that's
usually
not
they don't own the land, so.
They're just coming through. They hunt for a week and then they forget about everything,
and
really.
It's done and hope it's good next year. But that's how land just slowly decreases its value over time. And as we hunt, we group hunt other land that we share with other groups. You can just, it just doesn't, it's not any good anymore. Like, I mean, we could see a decline from what, hear stories 10 years ago of seeing all these deer, and then, till now, and you see 20 deer, it's just the hunting pressure goes down. The deer seem to know. I mean, people think deer are dumb, but they know. They can remember this. I mean, it happens every year to them at this time. They're running full speed out of places and moving and trying to get to safety. I mean, they know.
Oh, yeah, I think that's definitely something that goes into, as you're talking about, like the good feelings you get from it, because these are smart animals. They know what's going on. They adjust to patterns, all sorts of stuff like that. And it's just overall an amazing experience.
And they know when to bed down. They know when to stay put, and they know where to go and when, times when the hunting season rolls around. So,
yeah, I'd say almost every animal you hunt is intelligent, and they're all adapting in ways we don't even see. You got turkeys. Turkeys are very smart, actually.
Very smart. And in my opinion, I think they correspond together, especially in springtime when I go wherever you see deer, there's usually turkeys. In my opinion, it's because turkeys can't smell. So I feel like the deer help the turkeys out in that sense. I mean, turkeys are have incredibly good hearing.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think deer's hearing is as, great. I know it's there. But,
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's definitely as advanced. So I think they help each other out in the sense of safety. As in the wintertime, you'll see them run together. I mean, it's just, to me, they correspond together. They help each other out. And like, you can hear, if you listen real close, a lot of times you'll hear different birds. I know it sounds crazy, but I think, I've heard of mockingjay, or not really mockingjays, but blue jays will give out a distinct call, and it's usually a distress call, especially in the wintertime.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like they hang around the whitetails, and it's just, everything in the forest helps each other out.
I think deer definitely pick up on the other ones, because like stress calls from animals cause everyone to react to it.
And a deer stress call is definitely going to alarm everything in the woods. I mean, a snort or a blow from a deer, I mean, everything's gone. Turkey's gone. I mean, it's just yeah.
It's still like a whole community in there. Like, just because they're different animals doesn't mean they're not.
Doesn't mean they help each other out, because I'm sure if something's distressed or running, it's not going to alarm the other animals. I mean, you can't tell me that it's not. So
yeah. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up. That was a great one with Hunter.
Yep.
Hope to have you back.
Yep.